The town hall meeting room smelled of stale coffee and bureaucratic indifference. 50 of my neighbors, ranchers, farmers, people I'd known for 50 years, sat on metal folding chairs, whispering. At the front of the room, my daughter, Alice, stood at the podium. She was wiping tears from her cheeks, looking frail and overwhelmed. She didn't look like a woman who had poisoned 20 head of cattle 3 days ago. She looked like a martyr. "I tried," Alice sobbed into the microphone. "I came home to help Daddy. I tried to maintain the ranch. But the cruelty, the negligence, it's just too much for him. The vet confirmed malnutrition. He's forgetting to feed them. He's poisoning the water by mistake. For the sake of the animals, we ask the board to grant emergency zoning rezoning to commercial resort status so we can liquidate the herd and sell the land. It's the humane thing to do." The zoning board chairman nodded sympathetically. He raised his gavel. "Wait," I said. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. My voice is like gravel in a cement mixer. It carries. I stood up from the back row. My boots thumped heavy on the linoleum floor. I was wearing my working Stetson and a denim jacket stained with mud from the calving barn. "Mr. Dutton," the chairman sighed, "please, your daughter is trying to save you." "My daughter," I said, walking slowly down the aisle, ignoring the pain in my arthritic knees, "is trying to sell 500 acres of prime watershed to a developer from California for a quick buck." "That's not true," Alice cried. "Daddy, please sit down. You're confused." "I might be confused about a lot of things, Alice," I said, reaching the front table, "like why you bought 5 gallons of industrial herbicide last Tuesday, or why I found antifreeze in the North Paddock trough." I pulled a mason jar from my jacket pocket. It was filled with murky water. "You say I'm poisoning them?" I slammed the jar on the table in front of her. "This came from the trough this morning. If it's safe, Alice, you drink it." Alice stared at the jar. Her face went pale. "Before I tell you how the board meeting ended and the look on the developer's face when the sheriff walked in, you need to understand how a man who dedicated his life to raising life almost got buried by his own blood. If you respect the land and despise those who would pave it over, tip your hat and hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Let's ride. My name is John Dutton. No relation to the TV show, though my life feels like a drama lately. I'm 72 years old. My grandfather homesteaded this valley in Montana back when the only law was a Winchester rifle. I own 500 acres of the greenest pasture this side of the Rockies. I run 300 head of Black Angus cattle. I don't vacation, I don't play golf, I ranch. Ranching isn't a job, it's a stewardship. You take care of the land, and the land takes care of you. It's a simple contract, but simple doesn't mean easy. Last winter, the contract got harder. My wife, Martha, passed away during a blizzard. Her heart gave out while she was helping me pull a breech calf. I buried her on the hill overlooking the creek. Without her, the silence in the ranch house was deafening. I kept working because cows don't care if you're grieving. They need hay, they need water. 6 months ago, Alice came home. I hadn't seen Alice in 5 years. She left when she was 18, chasing the bright lights of Los Angeles. She wanted to be an event planner. She called home on Christmas, usually asking for money. But after Martha died, she showed up in a rental car, luggage piled high. "I'm here to help, Daddy," she said, hugging me. "Mom wouldn't want you alone." I was grateful. I was lonely. And frankly, my knees were getting bad. I thought maybe she had grown up. I thought maybe the city had chewed her up and she was ready to come back to her roots. For the first few months, it was nice. She cooked, she organized the office paperwork, something I hated doing. But then the suggestions started. "This land is worth millions, Dad," she'd say over dinner, scrolling on her phone. "Why work so hard? We could sell. You could move to a condo in Bozeman. Heated floors. No more freezing mornings." "I'm not selling. This land stays in the family." "But I'm the family, and I don't want a ranch. I want security." She started bringing around a man named Mr. Thorne.
He was a slick developer who wore loafers in the mud. He talked about eco-lodges and glamping sites. He offered me $5 million for the water rights alone. I kicked him off the porch with my shotgun. "Don't come back," I warned him. Alice was furious. She stopped talking to me for a week. Then she changed tactics. She became sweet again, solicitous. "You're right, Dad," she apologized. "I just worry about you. You're getting older. You're forgetting things." She started moving things around the house, my keys, my checkbook, making me look for them, making me doubt my mind. I ignored it. I figured she was just messy. But you don't mess with the herd. Last Tuesday, I went out to check on Old Red, my prize bull. He was worth $20,000. He was standing in the north paddock, head down, foam dripping from his mouth. He was staggering. My heart stopped. In cattle country, a sick bull isn't just sad, it's a financial catastrophe. I ran to him. He was bloated, poisoned. I looked around the paddock. No toxic weeds. I checked the fence line, secure. Then I checked the water trough. It smelled sweet, sickly sweet. I knew that smell. Every rancher knows it. It's the smell of death masked as candy. Someone was trying to kill my herd, and the only tracks in the mud leading to the trough were the size of a woman's boot. Old Red was kneeling in the mud, his breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. I knelt beside him, stroking his massive head. He weighed 2,000 pounds, a beast that could crush a pickup truck if he wanted to, but right now he couldn't even lift his nose. I dialed Doc Weaver on my cell. "Doc," I said when he answered, "get out here, now. Red is down." Doc Weaver arrived 20 minutes later, his truck fishtailing up the gravel drive. He jumped out with his bag before the engine stopped turning over. We spent the next hour working on the bull, pushing fluids, taking blood, administering activated charcoal. It was dirty, desperate work. Alice never came out of the house. She stayed inside, watching us from the kitchen window like a spectator at a rodeo she hoped would go wrong. "He's gonna make it," Doc said, wiping sweat from his forehead with a rag. "But he barely. His kidneys took a hit." "What was it, Doc?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Doc walked over to the water trough. He dipped a test strip into the murky water. He waited 10 seconds, then looked at the color. "Glycols," Doc spat on the ground. "Antifreeze, and something else. High concentrations of nitrate. Fertilizer? Herbicide?" "Herbicide," I corrected. "Industrial strength." "This didn't happen by accident, John," Doc looked at me gravely. "Cows don't drink antifreeze unless someone sweetens the pot, and fertilizer doesn't jump into a trough. You got a vandal." "I have a daughter," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Alice?" Doc raised an eyebrow. "She used to name the calves." "She grew up," I said, "and she wants to sell. She thinks if the herd dies, I have no reason to stay. Or worse, she wants to prove I can't take care of them." "If she kills livestock to prove a point, that's a felony," Doc said, packing his bag. "I have to report this toxins finding to the state, John. It's protocol." "Report it," I said, "but don't file the official findings until Monday. Give me the weekend. I need to catch her doing it." Doc hesitated, then nodded. "You watch your back, Big John. A woman who hurts a helpless animal, there's something broken inside." Doc left. I watched his truck disappear. I went to the barn. I needed proof. I couldn't just accuse her based on a hunch and a test strip. I needed the bottle. Alice had turned the old tack room into her office. She kept it locked, claiming she had expensive event planning equipment inside. I walked to the door, a simple padlock. I didn't have the key, but I had a bolt cutter. Snip! The lock fell to the hay-strewn floor. I opened the door. It wasn't an office. It was a war room. There were maps on the walls, topographical surveys of my ranch, but they weren't agricultural maps. They were architectural renderings. Overlaid on my grazing pastures were outlines of condos, a golf course, and a massive lodge called the Dutton Eco Resort. I walked to the desk. There were invoices scattered everywhere. And then I found it, stuffed into a trash can she hadn't emptied yet because she assumed I never came in here.
A receipt from the farm supply store in Billings, dated 2 days ago. 1X 5-gallon Roundup Pro, 2X case antifreeze coolant, 5X 50-pound bags rock salt. Rock salt. She wasn't just poisoning the water, she was planning to salt the earth. Salting the fields destroys the soil salinity. Nothing grows there for decades. If she killed the grass, I'd have to import hay. I'd go bankrupt in 6 months. She was planning a scorched earth campaign against her own heritage. I folded the receipt and put it in my shirt pocket. Then I saw the binder. It was thick, leather-bound. Project Alpha Sales Agreement. I flipped it open. It was a contract, a pre-sale agreement with Thorn Development Corp. The purchase price was listed at $5 million, but there was a contingency clause highlighted in yellow. Closing condition. Property must be vacated of all livestock operations and agricultural zoning designation removed by end of the month. End of the month? That was in 4 days. That's why she was escalating. She was running out of time. I heard the gravel crunch outside. A car was pulling up. Not a truck. A smooth, expensive engine. I looked out the dusty window. It was Mr. Thorne, the developer. He parked his BMW next to the corral. Alice came running out of the house to meet him. She was smiling. She hugged him. They walked toward the north pasture, the one with the creek. "Let's go take a look at the marina site," Thorne said loudly. Marina? He wanted to dam the creek. He wanted to flood the valley my grandfather homesteaded to make a lake for rich tourists. I wanted to walk out there and punch him in the jaw, but I remembered Old Red. I remembered the poison in the water. Anger wouldn't save the ranch. Strategy would. I needed to see exactly what they were planning, and I needed to know when she planned to strike next. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my Dane camera. It's a small, motion-activated trail cam I use to track wolves and bears. It takes high-resolution video and has night vision. I slipped out the back of the barn. I circled around the corral, staying low in the tall grass. I moved with the stealth of a hunter, ignoring the screaming ache in my knees. They were standing by the creek gate. "When does the old man vacate?" Thorne asked, lighting a cigar. "Tuesday, Daddy. The zoning board meeting is Monday night. Once I show them the evidence of the dead cows and the vet reports, they'll revoke his license. He'll be in a home by Wednesday." "Make sure the cows look bad," Thorne said, blowing smoke into the clean mountain air. "I want photos of ribs showing. Malnutrition sells the neglect narrative." "Don't worry," Alice laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "I cut the water to the south field this morning. They'll be thirsty enough to drink anything by tonight." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. She had cut the water. It was 90 degrees out. 300 cows in the south field without water would dehydrate in 24 hours. I had to get back to the house. I had to turn the water back on. But more importantly, I had to plant the camera. I waited until they walked further down the fence line. I sprinted, as fast as a 70-year-old can, to the fence post nearest where they were standing. I strapped the camera low to the post, covered with brush. It was pointed directly at the main water valve junction for the irrigation system. If she came back to tamper with it, I'd have her in 4K resolution. I made it back to the house before they returned. I sat in my recliner, chest heaving, pretending to read the newspaper. Alice walked in 10 minutes later. She looked happy, flushed with victory. "Who was that?" I asked, turning a page. "Just a friend, Daddy," she smiled. "We were just looking at the view. Isn't it beautiful?" "It is," I said, looking her in the eye. "It's worth fighting for." "Oh, Daddy," she sighed, patting my hand condescendingly. "You're too old to fight." "We'll see," I said. That night, the retention hook sank deep. I woke up at 2 a.m. My phone buzzed. It was an alert from the trail cam I had just planted. Motion detected. I opened the app. On the screen, in grainy black and white night vision, I saw Alice. She was wearing heavy gloves. She was carrying a bag of rock salt, and she was heading toward the calves' pen.
She wasn't waiting until Monday. She was accelerating the kill. The glow of the phone screen illuminated the anger etched into the lines of my face. On the trail camera feed, Alice was pouring the bag of rock salt into the small, round trough in the nursery pen. This pen held 20 calves, all under 3 months. Their kidneys were fragile. High sodium levels would dehydrate them within hours, leading to seizures and death. She wasn't just poisoning livestock, she was killing the future of the herd to force a bankruptcy sale. I wanted to run out there and shake her until her teeth rattled, but if I confronted her now, she would claim she was just adding mineral supplements. She would lie, and with Thorne's money behind her, she might even win. I needed the trap to snap shut in a public forum. I needed the town hall meeting. I watched her finish and scurry back toward the house. She looked like a thief in the night. Once I saw the back door close on the security feed, I put on my boots. I moved through the dark yard, using the moonlight to guide me. I didn't turn on a flashlight. I walked to the calf pen. The trough was white with salt at the bottom. The calves were sleeping, huddled together against the cold. They hadn't drunk yet. I spent the next hour working in silence. My knees ached on the hard ground. I hauled a siphon hose from the barn. I drained the tainted water into the dirt outside the pen. I scrubbed the salt residue from the bottom of the plastic tank until my knuckles bled. Then I dragged the hose from the well pump and refilled it with clean, cold mountain water. I hid the evidence, the empty salt bag she had tossed over the fence, in my tool shed. By the time the sun started to color the peaks pink and orange, the pen was safe. The calves woke up and drank, oblivious to how close they had come to dying. I went back inside and made coffee. When Alice walked into the kitchen at 8 a.m., I was frying eggs. "Morning," I said, flipping a yolk. She looked out the window at the calf pen. She was expecting to see sick animals. She was expecting chaos. Instead, she saw calves bounding around, happy and healthy. A flash of confusion crossed her face. "Everything okay outside?" she asked, pouring coffee with a hand that wasn't quite steady. "Just fine," I said. "Why wouldn't it be?" She frowned. She couldn't ask without revealing herself. No reason, just, the weather. She went back to her room. She was probably texting Thorne, trying to figure out why her poison didn't take. But the day wasn't over. Alice had a backup plan. At 1 p.m., a white truck with the state seal on the door pulled into the driveway. A man with a clipboard got out. He wore a uniform, Montana Department of Livestock. Alice ran out to meet him before I could get to the porch. "Officer," she cried, waving her hand, "thank goodness you're here. I tried to stop him, but he just gets confused." I walked out onto the porch. The officer looked up. It was Mr. Miller. I knew him. He was a good man, but he was strictly by the book. "John," Miller tipped his cap, but he didn't smile. "We received an anonymous tip this morning about potential herd neglect, salt poisoning, dehydration." "An anonymous tip?" I asked, looking at Alice. "I had to call, Daddy. I saw you last night near the calf pen with the salt bag. I tried to tell you to stop, but you wouldn't listen. You thought you were feeding them sugar." It was a brilliant lie. She took her own crime and projected it onto me, using the dementia angle as the glue. "She says you were confused," Miller said, taking out his pen. "John, if there's salt in that water, I have to quarantine the herd, and I have to report you to the APS. We can't have you endangering animals." Alice looked at me. Her eyes were pleading, begging me to just admit I was senile so she could take over. She thought she had checkmated me. She knew she put the salt there. She expected Miller to find it. "Go check the water, Miller," I said calmly. Miller walked to the pen. Alice followed, sniffling. Miller dipped his finger in the trough. He tasted it. Fresh water. He frowned. He pulled out a salinity meter and dipped it. 0.02%. That's pure well water, Alice. There's no salt in here. Alice's jaw dropped. She stared at the water. She stared at the healthy calves. But I saw him. He must have... Maybe he drained it.
"Why would I drain it if I put it there thinking it was sugar?" I asked. "A confused man doesn't fix his mistakes, Alice." He repeats them. Miller looked at Alice. He looked at the frantic energy radiating off her. "I'm sorry to waste your time, Miller," I said. "My daughter, she worries, maybe a little too much." Miller closed his notebook. "Seems fine to me, John. But listen, with the zoning vote tonight, tensions are high. Maybe everyone should just take a breath." He got in his truck and left. Alice stood by the fence, vibrating with rage. The mask slipped completely. "You switched the water," she hissed, turning on me. "You old badger, you saw me." "I see everything, Alice," I said, stepping closer to her. "I saw the salt, I saw the receipts in your trash, and I saw the contract with Thorne." "Then you know it's over," she screamed. "You can't stop it. The board meets tonight at 6 p.m. Thorne owns 3 of the 5 board members. He promised them construction contracts on the resort. They're going to rezone this land whether you like it or not." "And what about me?" I asked. "I'm still the owner on the deed." "Not for long," she smirked. It was a cold, ugly look. "Thorne's lawyers filed an emergency injunction this morning based on your medical decline. If the board votes to rezone, the bank calls your operating loan due to change of business scope. You can't pay it. You go bankrupt. We buy the note for pennies on the dollar." She poked me in the chest. "You're going to lose the ranch tonight, and tomorrow I'm putting you in Sunnyvale. Pack a bag." She marched back to the house. She was right about the board. Small-town politics can be dirty. If Thorne had bought the board members, my testimony alone might not be enough. I needed something stronger than just words. I needed an undeniable biological fact. I took out my phone. I called Doc Weaver. "Doc," I said, "are the lab results back on Old Red?" "Just got them," Doc said. "Toxicology confirms industrial-grade glycols and nitrates, lethal levels." "I print it," I said. "Bring it to the town hall at 6 p.m. And Doc, bring the sample jar." "You going to war, John?" Doc asked. "No," I said, looking at the mountains my father handed down to me. "I'm going to a slaughter. I just need to make sure the right pig gets stuck." I walked to the barn. I found the bag of herbicide she'd bought, the Roundup Pro she hadn't used yet. I carefully poured a sample into a clear mason jar. I screwed the lid on tight. Then I went to the water trough where she had tried to kill Old Red. I scooped a second sample of the murky, poison sludge. Alice wanted a show. She wanted to prove toxicity. I was going to give her a chemistry lesson she would never forget. I put on my best Sunday shirt. I polished my boots. I put my Stetson on my head. Tonight, I wasn't just a rancher. I was the sheriff, the judge, and the executioner, and court was in session. The town hall parking lot was full of pickup trucks and luxury sedans. The division was stark even before I stepped inside. On one side stood the rusty Fords and Chevys of my neighbors, men and women whose families had been here since the territory days. On the other were the black BMWs and Range Rovers of Thorne's entourage, lawyers, surveyors, and investors ready to carve up the valley like a Thanksgiving turkey. I parked my truck. Doc Weaver parked right next to me. He got out, clutching a manila envelope. "You sure about this, John?" Doc asked, adjusting his glasses. "Once we ring this bell, you can't unring it. Alice goes to jail." "She made her choice when she poured salt in that water," I said, putting my hat on. "Let's go." We walked inside. The room was packed. Thorne sat in the front row, whispering to the board chairman, a man named Henderson who had recently bought a new tractor, despite claiming poor crop yields all year. Bribery has a tell, just like poker. Alice was at the presenter's table. She looked poised. She had traded her ranch clothes for a sharp business suit. She smiled when she saw me, but her eyes were cold, dead things. "I call this special meeting of the zoning board to order," Chairman Henderson announced, banging his gavel. "Agenda Item 1, emergency rezoning application for the Dutton Ranch property from agricultural to commercial resort mixed use." A murmur went through the room.
The applicant, Miss Alice Dutton, claims power of attorney based on owner incapacitation. Miss Dutton, the floor is yours." Alice stood up. She walked to the podium. She took a deep breath, and then the tears started. It was a performance that would win an Oscar. "I didn't want to do this," she began, her voice trembling. "I love my father, but since Mom died, he's just not the same. The ranch has fallen into disrepair. The animals are suffering. We've had confirmed cases of malnutrition. We've had chemical accidents due to senility." She clicked a remote. A projector screen lowered. A photo appeared. It was Old Red, my bull, lying in the mud, foaming at the mouth. "This is Old Red," she cried, "found 3 days ago, poisoned because my father mixed up the pesticide containers with the feed supplements. He thought he was helping. He nearly killed the herd." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My neighbors turned to look at me. I saw pity in their eyes. Worse, I saw belief. They knew I was old. They knew I was grieving. It was plausible. "The state inspector was there today," she continued, pressing her advantage. "He had to investigate salt poisoning in the calf pen. Salt poisoning. Who feeds salt to babies?" She looked at me, weeping. "I can't let the animals suffer anymore, and I can't let my father bankrupt himself trying to run an operation he can't understand. The Thorn development proposal saves the ranch's financial legacy and provides specialized care for my father. It's the only way." She sat down to scatter the claws from Thorn's people. The board members nodded solemnly. "Mr. Dutton," Chairman Henderson asked, looking at me over his spectacles, "do you have a statement, or perhaps a guardian present to speak for you?" The insult landed like a slap. He was treating me like a child in front of the people I had known for 50 years. I felt a tightness in my chest, not a heart attack, just the crushing weight of betrayal. Looking at the faces of my friends, Pete from the feed store, Mary from the diner, I realized they were ready to write me off. They were ready to put me out to pasture. I'm telling you this because maybe someone watching feels the same way right now. Maybe you think you're too old to fight back against the noise. Maybe you think your time has passed. Trust me, it hasn't. Wisdom isn't a weakness, it's ammunition. I stood up. My knees popped loudly in the quiet room. I walked to the podium. I didn't take off my hat. "I don't have a guardian," I said, my voice rumbling low and deep. "And I don't have a prepared speech. I just have a question for my daughter." Alice looked up, dabbing her dry eyes. "You say I mixed the pesticide," I said. "You say I'm senile." "Daddy, please," she whispered into her microphone, "don't embarrass yourself. If I'm so confused, then why is my handwriting not on the receipts?" I pulled out a folded paper I had found in the barn trash. "This is a receipt from the Farm and Fleet in Billings, dated Tuesday, 10:42 a.m., for 5 gallons of Roundup Pro and 50 pounds of rock salt." "I bought supplies for the ranch," she stammered. "You told me to." "Really?" I asked, because at 10:42 a.m. on Tuesday, I was at the dentist getting a crown put in. I have the billing statement right here. I pulled a second paper from my pocket. "And unless I can be in 2 places at once," I said, turning to the audience, "I didn't buy that poison. You did, Alice, and you paid with your personal credit card. Last 4 digits, 4492. Thorn stood up abruptly in the front row. "Mr. Chairman, this is irrelevant. The man is paranoid. He digs through trash. We have a signed medical affidavit from Dr. Evans stating Mr. Dutton shows aggressive dementia." Thorn held up a document. "Dr. Evans," I laughed. "I haven't seen Dr. Evans in 10 years. If he diagnosed me, he did it by telepathy." "The point is moot," Thorn shouted again, trying to regain control. "The water rights contract is signed. The board has to vote on the zoning based on economic viability." "Economic viability," I repeated. "You mean the contract where you pay my daughter a $500,000 consulting fee under the table?" Thorn froze. "Yeah," I said. "I saw the draft email on her iPad. You didn't just buy the land, Thorn. You bought my daughter."
Alice stood up.
Her face twisted in rage. The grieving daughter act vanished. "Shut up, old man. You don't know what you're talking about. You're ruining everything." "I'm just getting started," I said. I looked at Doc Weaver. He stood up, holding the manila envelope. "Chairman," I said, "before you vote, I want to introduce a new exhibit. It's not a receipt. It's a biology lesson." I reached into my other pocket. I pulled out the mason jar filled with the murky water from the trough, the water Alice had poisoned. I unscrewed the lid. The chemical smell wafted through the room. "Alice says this water is clean," I said, pouring a glass of it onto the table. It splashed, green and oily. "She says I'm imagining the poison." I looked at Alice. "Drink it," I said. The room went deadly silent. The kind of silence you only hear in a courtroom before a verdict, or in a pasture right before a tornado touches down. Everyone stared at the glass of green-tinted liquid sitting on the presenter's table. The chemical smell of the industrial herbicide mixed with the sweet scent of antifreeze wafted up to the ceiling fans and drifted over the crowd. Alice looked at the glass. She looked at me. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed dryly. "I won't," Alice whispered, backing away from the podium. "I won't dignify this bullying. You're trying to humiliate me." "It's just water, Alice," I said, my voice echoing off the back walls. "If I'm senile, if I mixed up the containers by accident like you claim, then maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just electrolytes. So take a sip." "No," she hissed. "Why not?" I pushed. "Because you know exactly what's in it. Because you poured it there yourself to kill a bull that my father bought 40 years ago." Thorne stood up again. He was sweating now. His expensive suit suddenly looked uncomfortable. "This is theater. We aren't here for chemistry experiments. Mr. Chairman, call the vote." Chairman Henderson looked nervous. He looked at Thorne, then at the jar, then at the angry murmurs starting to ripple through the crowd of ranchers. Ranchers don't like poisoners. "I think we should hear from the veterinarian," Henderson said weakly. Doc Weaver walked to the front. He laid the toxicology report on the table. "This sample was pulled from the bull's stomach content," Doc announced, adjusting his spectacles. "It contains glyphosate and ethylene glycol. The concentrations match the exact chemical profile of the items on the receipt Mr. Dutton just showed you." Doc looked at the board members. "This wasn't an accident," Doc said firmly. "Accidental poisoning leaves trace amounts. This bull was force-fed a lethal dose. This is livestock tampering. In Montana, that's a Class B felony." Thorne looked at the report. He looked at Alice. He did the math. The deal was contingent on a clean title and quick sale. A felony investigation would freeze the assets for months, maybe years. Thorne grabbed his briefcase. "We withdraw our application," Thorne announced, buttoning his jacket. "Thorne Development is withdrawing its offer for the Dutton Ranch." "What?" Alice spun around, grabbing his arm. "No, you can't. We have a contract." "The contract has a morality clause, and it requires the seller to have clear legal standing. You don't. You're a liability." He turned to leave, marching up the center aisle. "You promised me," Alice screamed after him, her voice cracking into hysteria. "I did everything you said. I poisoned the damn cows. I cut the water. I did everything you wanted." The entire room gasped. She froze. She clamped her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide of horror. She realized too late that she had just screamed her confession into a live microphone. I stood there, looking at my daughter. My heart broke. Not for the loss of the land, I saved that, but for the loss of the little girl who used to ride on my shoulders. Greed is a fire, and it had burned her hollow. "Sheriff," I called out to the back of the room. Sheriff Tate had been leaning against the back wall the entire time, his arms crossed.
He tipped his hat to me and walked forward. He blocked the aisle, stopping Thorne in his tracks. "Mr. Thorne, you're not going anywhere either. Conspiracy to commit animal cruelty, attempted fraud, and I believe we need to discuss that consultant fee you bribed a local official with." Tate looked at Alice. "Alice Dutton, place your hands behind your back." Alice looked at me. "Daddy, do something. Help me." I looked at the handcuffs Tate was unhooking from his belt. I looked at the jar of poison on the table. "I'm helping you, Alice," I said softly. "I'm stopping you before you hurt anyone else." She sobbed as the steel cuffs clicked shut. It was an ugly sound, the sound of entitlement shattering against reality. The board members looked down, ashamed they had almost been complicit. The neighbors looked at me with newfound respect, seeing not a confused old man, but the iron backbone of the valley. I walked over to the table and picked up the jar of tainted water. I screwed the lid back on tight. "Doc," I said, "keep this for evidence." "You got it, Big John," Doc said. I walked out of the town hall into the cool night air. The stars were out, millions of them, shining down on the mountains that hadn't changed in 10,000 years. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of sage and pine, not antifreeze. But the fight wasn't quite over. I had saved the land, but I had lost my family. Or so I thought. As I walked to my truck, a shadow moved near the fender. I tensed, hand reaching for the tire iron in the truck bed. Was it one of Thorne's men? "Mr. Dutton?" A young man stepped into the light. He wore dirty boots and a trucker hat. He was Jimmy, a ranch hand I had let go 3 months ago because Alice said we couldn't afford him. "Jimmy?" I asked. "I heard what happened, about Alice, about old Red. I wanted to say I'm sorry." "Not your fault, son," I said. "I know," Jimmy looked at his boots. "But I also wanted to say, if you need help getting the South Field water back on, or feeding the herd, I'm looking for work, and I promise I won't poison anything." I looked at the kid. He was honest, he worked hard. He reminded me of myself 40 years ago. "You're hired," I said. "Start tomorrow, 0500. "Yes, sir," Jimmy grinned. I got in my truck. I didn't drive fast. I drove slow, savoring the feeling of the gravel under the tires. The ranch was safe, my legacy was safe, and I realized that family isn't just blood. Family is the people who help you mend the fence when the storm breaks it down. I'm 72. I'm tired. My knees hurt. But tomorrow I'm getting up at dawn because the cows need to eat, and for the first time in months, I'm the one feeding them. The seasons change fast in Montana. Winter arrived early that year, covering the scars on the land with a thick blanket of snow. I sat on my front porch drinking coffee, watching the steam rise from the cup. The ranch was quiet, but it was a good quiet, the silence of rest, not the silence of death. 6 months had passed since the town hall meeting. The fallout was swift and unforgiving. Thorne Development didn't just withdraw the offer, they collapsed entirely under the weight of the investigation. Sheriff Tate found evidence of bribery stretching back 5 years. Thorne is currently out on bail, awaiting trial for racketeering. He won't be building any eco-resorts where he's going. Alice's case was harder. Not legally, the evidence was overwhelming, but emotionally. She pled guilty to livestock tampering and attempted fraud to avoid a harsher sentence. The judge gave her 5 years. I went to see her once in the county lockup before they transferred her to the state penitentiary. She looked small in the orange jumpsuit. The city polish was gone. She cried when she saw me, but she didn't ask for forgiveness. She asked for money for the commissary. "I can't help you, Alice," I told her through the glass. "I can't fund the person who tried to poison my herd." "I just wanted to be free of this place," she whispered. "You're free of it now," I said, standing up. "You don't have to worry about the cows anymore." I haven't gone back.
Maybe one day, when she gets out, we can talk. But forgiveness takes time, and trust takes longer. Right now, I have neither to spare. Old Red pulled through. It took a month of careful feeding and medication, but the bull is back in the pasture. He's back in the pasture. He's a little slower, and his kidneys'll never be 100%, but he's alive. He's tough, like me.
The ranch has changed, too. Jimmy, the kid I hired back that night, turned out to be the best foreman I've ever had. He treats the land with respect. He listens to the grass. Last week, I caught him repairing a fence post I hadn't even noticed was leaning. "Why are you fixing that, Jimmy?" I asked him. "It's still holding wire." "Because if we wait until it falls," Jimmy said, wiping sweat from his brow, "the cows get out. Better to fix it while it's standing." I smiled. That's the cowboy way. I deeded him a small parcel of land near the creek, not enough to subdivide, but enough to build a cabin. He's family now, not by blood, but by sweat. And out here, sweat bonds tighter than DNA. I don't worry about the future as much anymore. I know I'm slowing down. My knees still ache when a storm is coming. But I also know that when I eventually hang up my hat, the land won't be turned into a parking lot. It will stay wild. It will stay green. Yesterday, I found the eco-resort blueprints Alice had hidden in the barn. I tossed them into the wood stove. They burned bright and fast, turning into ash that flew up the chimney and scattered into the wind. It's a hard life, ranching. It breaks your body. It tests your soul. But when the sun hits the valley floor in the morning, turning the frost into diamonds, you realize why you fight for it. There are people in this world who look at land and see dollar signs. They look at animals and see units of production. And they look at old men and see obstacles to be removed. Alice made the mistake of thinking I was just an obstacle. She forgot that I'm the one who built the fence. I'm John Dutton. I'm 73 years old, and I'm still the boss. To everyone watching, protect your legacy. Watch your water. And if someone tries to tell you that the new way is better just because it's easier, check their boots. If they aren't muddy, they aren't working for you. This is John Vengeance. Thank you for riding along. If you're glad the herd is safe and the snakes are in cages, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories from the frontier of justice. Stay tough, stay honest, and never sell the saddle.